Hello GM and players, thank you so much for your love that you've shown with Dragonveil so far. It means so much to us here who are opening up the beta and hoping everyone is playing it and checking it out. I've heard so much love so far over the handbook itself, from the cover art to the character sheet art to just everything. So thank you so much for your support on that. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to delve more into it. And to help you guys get started, I thought I would help you break down the character sheet, because I know building a character itself can be very tricky to figure out. So let's dive into it. Let's go beyond the veil. So first and foremost, before I can show you the step-by-step process on how to break down your ability note sheet, I must applaud my friend Regina Mendez, aka Luna the Kahuna, as you can see on the character sheet itself. She designed the character sheet front to back, made the widgets and everything on it. She's so talented. Her and I have been friends for years, and I have to commend her for taking the time to help me build my game. Thank you so much, Regina. I appreciate you so much. So go follow her on Instagram. Go show her love to her original art, her character OCs for shows that she likes to watch. She's very talented and definitely worth checking out. So thank you for bringing my dream to life. So how the character sheet with Dragonveil works is that the sheet itself is built to do two jobs at the same time. The classic mechanical stuff like stats, HP, modifiers, armor and attack, yada yada yada, your species and all this stuff, and then the original Dragonveil stuff that helps you figure all of that out, which, as you can see on your character sheet right here, the pillars and faults mechanic, and the way that you track your overall character over the campaign. Let's do this in order so it makes sense for all of you new players out there who happen to have Dragonveil be their first TTRPG, or for someone who's just trying to navigate the new system. Let's take it slow. First, the boring and the necessary stuff, your character's name, your species, and your class. Sometimes picking those things out last might be helpful, especially the name and everything. Sometimes you want to get into the nitty and gritty, but me personally, I like to figure out what race I want to be, what class I want to be, and its branch. So here's a list of all 15 species that you can play in Dragonveil. They all have their own unique features that affect the stats in their own unique way. All of it's in way more detail on the handbook at this page right here. So go look at that. That will help you build your character more. And then you pick your class. There are at least 10 main classes in Dragonveil, all of which can be found right here and at this page number. And then your branch. The branch is how you specialize yourself around the class. Class is like your main identity of play, and then branch is your stylistic spice on it. Think of it like the class is the state, and then the branch is the capital, and then all of your mannerisms are the different towns that your character has. Very weird analogy, but hopefully that makes sense. And speaking of those character mannerisms, let's figure out pillars and faults. The handbook itself says that to choose at least 1 to 3 pillars and 1 to 3 faults, coming into different categories like physical, emotional, mental, and the optional of spiritual if that's where you want your character to go. Now here's the thing, pillars and faults might sound a little gimmicky, but hear me out. Pillars are like your character's virtues. They're good traits about themselves, stuff that they're good at, things that they're confident in, a good trait of theirs that they have in their personality. And then their faults are like their flaws, what they're not so good at, kind of an incapability that they have, an arc that they want to learn, and these will help you sort your stats as well as your roleplay. It's encouraged to do pick 1 to 3, but focus on just like the main identities. Sometimes 1 is just enough to figure out your character. The main things to really focus on to help you with your stats are the physical and mental side of things when it comes to the pillars and faults. Physical affects your physical stats, mental affects your mental stats. Emotional and spiritual are definitely important, but right now let's focus on the ones that will affect your overall stats. So on the sheet, you'll literally see the physical pillars and the physical faults in the boxes, same for the rest of the categories. Physical stats are strength, dexterity, and constitution. Mental states are intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Pillars give you a plus, faults give you a negative. But what exactly do you fill in the boxes other than just adjectives about your character? Glad you asked. Dragonveil uses the 6 stat model blocks: con, dexterity, strength, charisma, intelligence, wisdom. You get it. But it does not do the classic D&D 3 to 18 math standpoint. We know that sometimes the manual roll or the standard array can be rigged to a certain extent. So we have a pick and place method. You have a 5, a 7, and a 10 for both your physical and your mental stats. You place them where you want. Then those numbers translate into modifiers. 5 gives you -1, 7 is your neutral state, and then 10 is your +1. And depending on your physical faults and your physical pillars, or your mental faults and your mental pillars, will help you figure out where to put those numbers exactly. So it's not just flavored roleplay, it helps you with your stats. And your stats will help you figure out what skills you are proficient and an expert in. Now, if you play D&D, you're kind of familiar with the whole skill checks and everything like that whole table, and you're probably very frustrated that there isn't one for Constitution and that there isn't really one equal to all of the 6 stats. Sometimes one is more catered to the other. Here at Dragonveil, we balance it all out so each stat, including Constitution, has a skill check for you. Now there's a long list of skills right here on the sheet, and that can look pretty jarring, but I promise you once you figure out all of your physical, mental, pillars and faults and your stats, it will become pretty easy. For each skill line, you've got 3 columns: proficiency, the skill name, and the modifier. The mod is pretty easy, just write down the stat modifier that the skill uses, that's in your stat blocks, and the proficiency box is for whether you're trained in that specific skill or not. Because in Dragonveil, proficiency is kind of a big deal. You get to pick 4 proficiencies, and what proficiency does is that it gives you advantage on those rolls. So you would roll the dice twice, and then you would pick the 2 higher set of numbers, and then you would state whether or not they're in Ember or whether they're in Frost. We'll get into that in another video. And don't feel like your proficiencies have to go to your positive stats. If you want a very weird mechanically worked character where you want them to be proficient in something that they're not particularly good in, so it feels like authentic growth, fine, put a plus there, then it just becomes a neutral roll. No biggie. There are no restraints on what you want to be proficient in and what you want to be an expertise in. Now what the expertise does is that it gives you an advantage and then also adds 2 to your roll. So in your modifier and in your E-box, which stands for expertise, in your stats, if you're an expert in a specific skill tied to that stat, you would add the +2 there. Now for the big combat basics: your HP, your armor class, and your initiative. HP, or health points, in Dragonveil is simple. You roll 2d10 twice, then add them together for your total. That's the standard method. And then when you level up, you roll again and then add it to your current HP. Pretty simple. Armor class has a rule of thumb that I love because it's honest. Your armor class is the sum of everything that keeps you from getting stabbed, burned, frozen. And now with armor class, it might seem complicated because of all the tables and the numbers and everything. Don't worry, it's pretty easy to follow. You add your Constitution modifier plus with whatever armor you want your character to wear, and that'll be your armor class. It's pretty easy to figure out. And then also you just have some species traits that might boost it up a little, or not. You might actually make it worse because your species isn't as tough as some other species. It's okay. That doesn't mean that your armor class is bad, it just means that's what your character is. But once you figure out the numbers and everything, it's not really hard to figure out. Just look at the armor table, decide what type of armor that you want, add your Constitution modifier and your species bonus modifier. No biggie. And then that's your armor class. And then there's the initiative bonus. Dragonveil has a unique initiative rule. Your initiative is based on your main class and branch from your character creation at the start. If you are a non-magic casting class, like these classes right here, you get a +5 because those types of classes would be more in the front lines versus magic casters who are more supportive, even in the most combative way possible, you would get a +2. So non-magic casting classes get +5, and magic casting classes get a +2. But that doesn't mean that magic casting people can't be at the front lines. It all depends on the role. All right, now for the features box. This is where you write the stuff that actually makes your character yours mechanically. Your class features, your species features, and any special traits that you want to add to your character. You write down all the stuff that's useful, stuff that they would get from level ups and everything. And all of that can also be added in your story progression section at the back as well. And now on the right of that box, you have your resource pool box. If you're a spellcaster, you'll track your spell points there. But if you're a martial or stamina-based class, you track your stamina/fury points there. We'll get into those systems in a second. And then your action and attack box, this is where all of your combat moves will come into play, where your attack spells will be at, where your stamina and fury moves will be at, your weapon damage, all of that stuff will be there. To the left of that box, that's where you'll have your trivia and quirks. This is just for if you want to list any like traits, habits, mannerisms that your characters have that will add to your roleplay, that the GM can maybe have story triggers for, just little facts and fun character stuff that you want to have on there. And if you're one of those more mechanical players and you don't want to mess with that stuff, that's great. There's an extra box for you to put some more resources in there. And then at the very bottom of the front page, there's your inventory box. This is pretty self-explanatory. Anything that you get, loot, items, bonuses, stuff that you carried from the beginning of the game, all of that stuff will be in the inventory box. Now on the back side of that, this is where the campaign brain starts to activate. You've got a big backstory section, you've got a story progression and character update section, and you've got a GM recommendation. Backstory is your pilot episode information. This is what you want your GM to know about your character, like their childhood, where they're at now in the campaign, stuff like that. Something that can give them the building blocks to help you set up your arc. And then the story progression section is where you record the stuff that happens during the play. Character arcs, big reveals, relationship shifts, even newly remembered backstory details that come up later on that you've developed in game. And the GM section is a shared space. Themes you and the GM agree on canon changes, opportunities, updates, maybe even some inventory changes if you really stocked up at the beginning on the front. Just stuff that you approve together. That way there's no surprises between the two of you. And here's the thing, if you filled everything out completely on the sheet and you still want to add more stuff, but you don't want to erase your current information, that is okay. That's why the handbook talks about personalized ability notes, extra pages, a digital doc, sticky notes, whatever you want to choose to track your stuff that doesn't fit cleanly on the main page yet. Then when something more prominent comes up and you need to add more information, old information can also be added on there as well. That way there's always a balance and nothing has to be lost. And that's character creation. I hope that made it a little bit clearer on how to fill out the information and how to start the game and make your character the best and most authentically yours as possible. Thank you so much for this journey so far, and I'm really glad that you guys got to peek beyond the veil yet again. Next video, we're going to go into the combat and magic system as well as dice mechanics. So stay tuned, and I'll see you later. Now, build boldly, roll bravely, and never let one failure stop your legend from being told.